Welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. Glad to have you with us this morning. Excited about today's guest. If you were a brand new listener, welcome to the conversation. Glad to have you. Don't forget to subscribe. And then one last thing, if you're new, we're not bashful here at the Rex Andrews Show. We'll beg for stars. So if you think we're doing a good job, please give us that 5-star rating. And, I have a caller on today, so I'm a well-dressed beggar. So, if you feel like we're doing a good job, please give us those stars. For those we are welcoming back, I've got a new feature that I'm going to start doing. We're welcoming listeners from all over the world, and this one is new for us. We actually have listeners in Brunei. Now, Brunei is on a tiny little country. It ranks 176 out of 233 countries in the world, and it's on the island of Borneo. So welcome to the listeners in Brunei. Love to have you with us. And thank you for tuning in. Those are with us multiple times. The show is growing so fast. We are in 32 countries, on 6 continents, over 460 cities. And if we could figure out a way to market to those pesky penguins and then help them charge their cell phones, we would probably have listeners on that 7th continent. All right. You can find us anywhere that on social media. We're out there in all the normal places. But I do suggest this. Come out to the show website. And the reason I do that is all of our guests have profiles on the show website. We're going to talk to our great guests today. And like we do with all of our guests, we don't have time to get to their full stories. So go to the website. You can get their bios and then links to all their businesses and their connections and those types of things. So hop on the site and learn more. Okay, today, got a fun episode for us. I love these educational type episodes because they help us understand things that, a lot of people don't get time to dig into. And the reason we don't is because, you see it here, you see it there, you see the terms and those types of things. So today, we're going to talk about AI. Well, what is AI? Well, that's artificial intelligence. Well, what does that mean? Well, not all of us know. And so I have some inclinations because I've studied a little bit, but I've got some experts with us today that are going to help us with that. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome to the show Beth White and John Carney. Folks, how are you this morning?
Doing great, Rex. Thanks for having us.
Yes, doing great. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Beth, if you could, because we like a lot of people do the play along thing with this. Your organization, could you please give out your website so people can find you, and they might be listening and sitting at their computer and want to catch your website. So could you do that for us?
Yeah, so the Medibot website it's www.m as in Mary, E as in Edward, B as in boat, or E, and then, sorry, B-O-T. So MEBEBOT.com. That's how you find us.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Now, John, you're also with Medibot. What role do you play there at the company?
I am the Chief Technical Officer at Medibot.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So I want to just give our audience a little bit of perspective here today and learn just a little bit about your backgrounds so that way we can kind of help them understand the angles you're coming at. So, John, you just let us know you're the CTO. What kind of background do you have and brought you here to Medibot to be the CTO?
Sure. My background is in development, hardcore. Recently, it's sort of moved up the chain a little bit to architecture, enterprise architecture, team management. I guess that's a natural progression for developers in their path. So I started writing code when I was, very young, and doing that for basically my entire adult life has led me to this path.
Okay, so for us geeks that are listening along, where did you start? Were you back at like C++ or Fortran? I mean, where did you enter the marketplace?
I guess you could say my first experience with coding was computer camp in 9th grade in Lake Chautauqua up in upstate New York.
Okay.
That was basic in Logo, if people remember Logo out there, Movie 10, that kind of thing, little drawing. And that's when I got the bug, and I knew I was going to be doing that forever.
Okay, fantastic. Well, then you've skated along quite a ways because that's a ways back in history from a programming perspective.
Absolutely. I'm
Okay.
old.
Well, I doubt he's as old as me, but we'll see about that. Okay, so fantastic. Now, um, what was your hop just before Medibot?
Yeah, before Medibot, I was the chief architect at Infor's retail point of sale group.
Okay.
So I'd come to that company through acquisition, and I had been designing large scale point of sale systems for tier one retailers, really big ones like, we did doing them for Nordstrom at the time. REI was part of it. Yeah, big retailers. So that they have interesting problems, and
Yes.
retail is probably the last of the enterprise, uh, true enterprise organizations. Maybe banks. Banks are like that too, and enterprise has a bit of a nebulous definition. Today we think of the enterprise as just lots and lots of servers, but I tend to think of enterprise as lots and lots of geographic distributions that have to be
Yes.
kept in sync. So, retail's got all the stores; those are physical locations. Banks have all those physical locations, but that's sort of a dinosaur definition for the term, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we'll change gears here, Beth. How about you? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I started MebeBot several years ago, but John and I have worked together at two companies. My core background was actually in HR, so I was that HR person that lots of folks ask questions to. I, worked in every facet of HR, from payroll benefits to HR leadership roles, and then, as I call it, I went on the dark side. So I started selling. I started working in sales. So
Okay.
I took my recruiting years of what many recruiters who are probably out there know, headhunting recruiting is sales. You're bringing people into companies, and it's the same kind of skills you utilize when you're selling products or services. So I evolved into selling retail technology systems, and that's how I met John. So we both worked at the same company that was acquired by Infor, and prior to that, another company that was acquired by Oracle. So
Okay.
we've had some years together, and so both a sales hat and a HR hat kind of brought me where I am today here at MebeBot as I call myself the CEO or chief bot.
The
So
chief bot. Okay.
yeah, to have a
When
little
did when
fun.
did you start Medibot?
It's been about 2.5, 3 years ago now. So
Okay.
last year was, to me, like 5 years in one. So
Yes.
it was a toughie, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it's 2.5, 3 years ago that we kicked off the company. Came from an idea into quickly acquiring customers and growing out the product and bringing great solutions to market now.
Now, did you go down the VC route, or how did you get things going with getting the company started?
Yeah, that's a good question because, I'm part of a lot of entrepreneurial circles here in Austin, Texas, and there's definitely different ways you can go start a business.
Sure.
I've been at a number of emerging startups here in Austin, and what I've learned is that it's great to have a wonderful technology or product idea, but if you don't know if you can sell it, what do you really have? So
Yeah.
when we started MebeBot, it was completely bootstrapped with an idea.
Okay.
And first thing we did was we went out and found, a beta customer to kind of kick things off.
Okay.
And so thank you, shout out to E2 Open, their enterprise supply chain software company. They gave us an opportunity. They loved the idea of how do we use AI chatbots to help, answer employee frequently asked questions, because guess what? We're going through a lot of acquisitions and we need to scale this company and onboard people quickly. How do we do that? So we provided them a solution, which gave us an idea of what that needed to look like to be a productized item that we could sell as a
Sure.
software, as a subscription. So bootstrapped, brought on more customers, received some angel funding,
Okay.
and this summer, late fall, we're looking toward raising our seed round of funding to really get things moving faster.
Fantastic. I have been through a couple of those.
Yep.
It is a hair on fire. Now I don't have any hair left, obviously. I've been through too many of them, but it's a hair on fire, but it's fun. It's energetic. It eats you up. You work 100 hours a week kind of thing. But yeah, it's an interesting environment to be part of something that starts, and looking back through those. So it's great. Now I'm going to, for just a moment here, and then we'll get back into our real topic here of the AI stuff is, you're somewhat unique. Now it's a group that's growing very, very fast, but to be And I don't mean any sexist by this, but to be a woman CEO in tech, that's not a huge circle of people currently.
Yeah, it's not. And I frankly didn't even really think about it when we started the company. I
Sure.
mean, I had been part of a lot of tech companies and I knew, I was usually one of, several women at some of the early stage startups, developers at the time. Many of the
Yeah.
technical people were men. But what's amazing is there's so many young women getting into software and technology now
Yeah,
that
it's
it's
great.
just changing. But it is a dynamic that, unfortunately, the world of women in technology isn't as broad, and especially at the high level. And then on the other flip side too, people from the HR profession actually starting technical companies, that's not very common either.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, the HR folks really have their eye on the whole business almost all the time. So why wouldn't they lead companies that are building technology solutions that help the employees and the people within the businesses?
Well, it's
So,
great because I can remember back in my days going to the big conferences, Comdex or Oracle World, or gosh, I could go down the list for days, listing all the types of conferences I used to go through. And it was just like a giant man fest. I mean, it was just,
yeah.
you would run into women and, you always respected them. They were very, very sharp people because, that's one thing that's great about the tech industry. Not a whole lot of dummies running around, right? I mean, it's really generally smart people. And but now it's exciting to see a lot more women jumping into it. And I don't have any gender issues of, you know, thinking high or low over anybody else. If you're smart, you're smart. You do those things. But I think it's great. So hats off to you for coming out of an industry, like you said, that isn't a whole lot of innovators, because usually those people are traffic cops about policy. So, who wants to go talk to the HR people?
Right, but they don't want to be, and that's
That's
why
right.
this solution is so important, is it helps them get out from under that role and really elevate themselves and employees to doing the work that's more meaningful with inside businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then one last thing I have to call you on the carpet for. You can't call sales the dark side. All right.
Yeah.
Sales is not the dark side. Okay.
It's
I refer myself as to a sales geek. Okay. Because that's an affectionate term. Geek is an affectionate term. So it's okay to be a sales geek. Okay. So you can't call us a dark side, because you know what? If you didn't have us sales geeks, you wouldn't have companies, right?
Well, you're absolutely right. And thank you for calling me out on it, because it isn't. It's really bringing the light to people that need to see. It's not
That's
dark.
right. That's
It's
right.
actually bringing solutions to people. Now, if we can get people more receptive on that,
Yeah.
on the other end of the phone or the email, to really get
Sure.
that you're out there to help them. And I think, as someone who had been in the HR profession and in recruiting, to me, it's about making connections. I mean, that's what sales is about, is you have
Yep.
a problem, I have a solution, let's make a connection so we can have it a win-win. And, the more that people realize that that's the value that sales people with the title of sales bring to organizations, they can be more of a trusted resource, a true
Yes.
trusted resource, instead of someone who's just, calling to ask for something.
Yeah.
So, we like to think of ourselves and our team, and when we approach the market, as like, look, we want to help make your lives easier. Let me
Yeah.
help you solve problems that I am sure are probably in your organization, because they're in all the other companies we're talking to
Sure.
today as well. So,
Well, fantastic. The one thing that I learned over my career over the last 34, 35 years, whatever it is, I'm so old I can't remember, is the fact that technology for the sake of technology is worthless. Okay. You can sit in your basement and write code all day, and fix these little things. But if you can't solve a problem, and then as important is if you can't articulate how your technology solves that problem, then you're toast. Because again, technology for the sake of technology is a waste of time. I mean,
That's absolutely true. Yeah, and we're seeing that realization kind of sweep through the data science aspects of technology today,
yeah,
where there's a popular movement now is the world doesn't need any more data scientists; it needs more data plumbers in
yes,
that regard, and that's it's an interesting point to make. As we have all of this data and we apply data science and artificial intelligence to this set of data that our business generates, what can we do with it? It's not enough just to hire a data scientist with, a PhD and say, go show me business insight from this collected, aggregated group of data, because they can't do it. If
Right.
that data scientist doesn't understand the business, they'll never extract value from that process.
Yeah, I can remember back in the early days, I was working with some workflow technologies. And this is, I mean, this will date me. We were working with flat file, what they would call it a database, like B-tree. I mean, faster than lightning, but it was a flat file database. Okay. So, and these guys would come in the office and they'd say, oh, I did this, this, and this. And I'd be like, so what? It doesn't solve any problems. So what? That was the term that we coined to all the developers was, so what? So you better tell me how this is going to make this better. Okay. So enough of my barking about that stuff. So John, if you could, we got a lot of listeners out there that are business owners, a lot of listeners that are pretty smart folks. Can you help us bring AI down to a good understanding of what it really is? Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there.
There's a lot of definitions for
Yeah.
AI, so we can start by just breaking it down in terms of English, right? AI stands for artificial intelligence, artificial, man-made, fabricated, something we make as people. Intelligence is a little more nebulous, but if you think of it, as an emergent behavior that rises beyond the programming or initial data that thing has. It's a good way to think about AI. So when we think about artificial intelligence from a technology perspective, what we're talking about is a system that can take its programming and its data, because they have to work together, to surprise or delight or horrify sometimes the people that created it. You're not able to completely predict the outcome that this complex system has. So it can look at its data, introspect that, and get to a conclusion that you didn't explicitly tell it. And if you're a programmer, you can think of it, think of logic as an if statement. If you have this, then this happens, right?
Right.
It's a very concrete, discrete set of logic. AI will not give you that warm and fuzzy known outcome, because you are feeding it such a complex series of interactions that you can't really predict reliably what the outcome will be of that process.
Okay. Now, back in the day, gosh, probably 20 years back, um, did AI evolve out of what we used to call smart systems? So you'd have help desk systems that would suggest, I have this problem, but now you should probably look at X, Y, and Z type of things. Or how has the evolution of
Yeah.
AI come?
Yeah, they absolutely did sort of come out of the expert systems, out of the 4GLs back in the day,
Hmm.
but they didn't have the understanding of what it took to arise to that point of view. Those were still very imperative systems where known outcomes were coded in those systems. So
Right.
the shortcomings of an old expert system would definitely give rise to alternate forms of research, and that's definitely what's happened in this space.
Well, I can remember, and right there in your backyard, I actually was involved in helping Dell Computer deploy for their tech support about 600 people that were on desk at that time, the expert systems, and then the content management. That if I found something, then I had a picture of it or a drawing of it and those types of things. And at that point in time, that was the bomb. I mean, to be able to have the ability to level the access to information. So you had one tech that maybe been with them 6 years, one tech 6 weeks, and you could level all of that. But again, it took a massive amount of coding, and you only knew what the outcomes were, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And those systems certainly were a generation leap from what was there before. Uh, it's difficult to sometimes draw the distinction between those old systems and a really good search engine, and they start to blur together where you're just looking for, certain key terms or key phrases that would extract that information out of those CMSs. AI treats the data as well as the process equally, because without one you can't have the other. And I think that was sort of the breakthrough that really popped this technology into existence and day-to-day accessibility.
Okay. So let me ask you, sort of the unwashed public person that doesn't have the depth of knowledge that you and I did. what was some of the early uses that where AI started to emerge?
Ooh, that's a good question. One of my earliest experiences that I saw with it was in manufacturing. They wanted to use AI to identify. This is actually my work down in college, actually. Uh, Flaws or fundamental breaks inside of a manufacturing process. And when you're trying to look at things that go by an assembly line very quickly, having a computer look at it and do machine learning with images was a big part of that. So is this part solid or not? And that's where I ran across it very early on, and that was a lot of fun. Um, I think that's probably the earliest use case I'm aware of that I personally
Okay.
had some interaction with.
So what year was that for us, John?
Oh, I started playing with that in the mid '90s. It
Mid
was certainly
90s.
wasn't AI, but the machine learning aspects of recognizing visual images was where we started to see we needed something new, we needed something different, right? And
Right.
that's where we started to really see the desire to go and explore the stuff outside of the pop culture references for AI, which I think it's easier to almost break down the technology from what we want versus what we had.
Right. Okay. So fast forward up to today, there's a lot of people who have misunderstandings. I think there's been from people in the media, gosh, not that they would ever tell us all the truth. Um, my sarcasm here. That there's a lot of fear mongering that's kind of, I think, in a lot of places, and some of it probably could be applied, where people are afraid of AI because they feel like the computers are going to take over and run things over, and it's going to squash, all kinds of stuff. And so, can you help us unpack that myth a little bit about, where are the boundaries? Are there boundaries? And help the people understand that.
Yeah, the boundaries of AI and the ethical aspects of this are something I think we're all struggling with. And I don't know if I even have a good answer to the question. I'm not sure anyone's even qualified to answer that, much less myself. But I would personally draw it along the lines of limiting the general use cases of data and analytics to the individual person. And I think there's a tremendous use case for being able to take a general analysis of what a society or what a group of people are able to do. But there's a real problem with then putting someone, an individual person, in that box and leaving them there. And that's a real problem. And we don't need AI to have those problems today in society.
No.
We have those problems today. Just with someone's zip code, you can pretty accurately predict their earning potential over their lifespan. It's not that the computer's causing that problem. It's so much as our societal needs to not allow upward mobility, I think is leading to more of those issues. We can blame the computer, which, does the math, but it's not the AI that will lead us to these situations. As for computers taking over, in some regards, they already have, right?
Yeah.
High frequency trading in stock markets will often dictate the volatility of that market. We've sort of kind of taken the brakes off that already. Will we see it? Will we see it in our cars? For sure, absolutely. Will
Sure.
they make us safer? Absolutely.
Hmm.
Will there be costs for that? Absolutely. And it'll be up to us as a society to decide, where to draw that line. But I don't think we know enough yet. It's too early in this technology's lifespan to really draw hard lines, I think.
Well, I think it's an important aspect that people understand. It's a lot like legislating laws. You can't legislate morals. You can't legislate boundaries of how people are going to behave. And I think that you can probably flip that over the fence to AI because the computer doesn't have morals. It's the people who are writing the programs and using it for those applications. That's when they know where they want to stop that line. But you can't
Sure.
blame it on the CPU and the code. I mean, come on.
No, but you can dictate how this stuff is processed. So here's a good example of this. A couple of years ago, there was a machine learned data model that came out over soap dispensers,
Okay.
right? And it turned out African Americans couldn't use these soap dispensers because they only trained all their images on white hands. That's what they used. Um, it's not that the code was bad. It's not that the people were bad. Just their bias was implicit in their process. And we don't have to have a law that says you need to train your data stuff with a certain percentage of things, but your bias will come through in your product at the end of the day. You have to be aware of these things. And there may be a correction as we enforce more diverse hiring practices into an organization. And that's how I think we influence is we get to the problem at its source. And that is, as you hinted earlier, we know with Beth as a woman CEO, that's how I think we deal with the problem, by making sure our hiring practices are diverse, because ultimately the people are making the systems, as you said.
Yeah. So Beth, from your perspective, what was the vision you had to start Medibot? I mean, did you have? Most people, when they decide to start a company, you say, "Hey, I see a problem." What did you identify when you did this?
You know, it was one of these situations that kind of came to me over time. For years, you know, when I was in the role of HR, I loved it. It was a great fit for me, meaning I love people. I want to see people do well in organizations. But there were a lot of aspects of that role that I just thought, this is burning me out. And when I talk to a lot of people in the profession, it's the same things, which is the administrative work, the administrative side of HR, which is a lot of still, you know, the frequently asked questions that people have for you, the paper pushing, as we used to call it. Now it's computer systems that have to talk to each other that are not well architected to do so. So there were a lot of things where you spent so much of your day doing that type of work versus doing the work that was more compelling and what brought you into the profession, right, which is, how do we create diversity, equity, and inclusion plans for a business? You know, that's a project that every HR person wants to jump on and really tackle, but they're in these administrative weeds that they can't get out of. And so that's the business problem I saw for years. And then fast forward, when I worked with John in the retail tech space, I saw retailers doing something that I thought was very fascinating. They had the world of physical retail stores, they had the world of e-commerce, and those were two siloed systems often happening within the ecosystem. And if you walked into, like John gave an example of an REI store, they might know what you purchased in store, but they might not know what you bought online. Well, we built technology that pulled it all together on a mobile device. So a store associate could look at you and say, oh, I see you bought those items here and this is, would you like to buy this or this too? Kind of fill out the picture. They call it, you know, omni-channel retailing. And that mobile device was what brought that picture forward for retailers to be able to accomplish that. So within business, when I started utilizing chatbots as a consumer, I saw them pop up on, you know, AT&T's website or my insurance website and ask me for help, so I didn't have to wait on a 45-minute hold to talk to somebody to get a problem solved. With billing, I thought, well, this is fabulous. This is speeding up the process. I get the answer to my question. This is great. And then it was like the light bulb kind of went off, because there's tools that a lot of businesses are gravitating now to, which are called collaboration platforms like Slack and Microsoft Teams, which are now becoming a focal point in many companies as to where employees more or less live. And so the chatbot technology that can be designed for businesses, you know, chatbots can live with inside as applications inside these collaboration platforms to essentially open up, like, okay, boom, there it is. There's this user interface now that can drive an experience to really help the business problem be solved. How do you get an HR out of the weeds, and how do you help employees better? You have to give them a tool, a chatbot in a system that's in their flow of work to be able to propel the solution forward. So a little bit of a long story, but it's essentially like, knew the business problem was there for years, saw evolution of technology. And then as we advance now, and boy, last year was an eye-opening year when everybody flipped the model and went to work remote.
Yes.
You couldn't just walk by HR's desk and ask a question or bring your computer over to IT. You know, you needed a different way to communicate with your business. And so all the businesses today are looking for new solutions that actually help employees engage, get information that they need when they need it, that serve up, you know, ideally more automated support, so that we can have this 24 level society that we have. We have 24/7 society where we have people in Europe and Asia, South America, we're everywhere. And, you know, you can't expect people to because you're a U.S. company, to be on your hours, right?
Right. Fantastic. So, I think an interesting observation of the pandemic, and you too will relate to this. The concept of working remote, I've had that for 20 some years.
Yeah.
I mean, my mentor said, "Oh, certainly I'll buy you a laptop because that means you're going to work everywhere." And he was true. It was absolutely true. So it was been very, very interesting to watch the world sort of wake up to, oh my goodness, I can work remote. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've been doing that forever. I can remember, I raised 5 kids. You can see the wall of fame behind me. I spent most nights somewhere at a Starbucks or something like that, working, waiting for kids to get off of practice for some sport or dance and stuff. So but you're right. The last year has forced a lot of people to wake up and go, wow. We're even seeing that here in the Denver metropolitan area. They have a thing called RTD, which is the Regional Transportation District. They're closing 83% of their offices because they figured out, oh my goodness, we don't need those offices. And I have seen on LinkedIn multiple pictures of people saying, hey, we just let our lease run out. So you're right, a lot of information. And the challenge is so many of those people's information systems are still siloed, very, very much so. I mean, even people who deployed ERP systems, back over the last, 15, 20 years, not all their data was, the same. I'm going through a major remodeling project right now, and I certainly wish Home Depot had the same intelligence to follow me around on what I've bought online and in the store and do a little bit of predictive things. Hey, Rex, how about you look at this or that? So interesting there. So you saw the vision of what this could be. Did you run over and tap John on the shoulder and said, hey, we can go do this? I mean, how did this evolve?
Yeah, well, really, I think the key to bringing, I believe, products to market is to get at least a beta customer, build out an MVP product. Yep. And so for us, that was really key. So we, again, worked with a company here headquartered in Austin called E2 Open. And we said, hey, we've got a solution that can help you automate answers to your employee frequently asked questions. You're a company that's going through tremendous growth through acquisitions. You're hiring hundreds of people on a given day because you purchased a company, right, and you're bringing their people in. And to a lot of folks that are in the HR operations and IT group, I call that Groundhog Day. It's like, whoa, that's like happening. And it's like everybody's starting on one day. Yep. And guess what? There's another acquisition that's going to happen 3 months later, and you're going to have the same experience all over again. Right. And when new employees start at a company, that's when they have a lot of the kinds of questions that Medibot is designed to answer. When do we get paid? How do I get a new insurance card? Yeah. How do I find a person in accounting that can help me with an expense report? I mean, these are all those types of questions that people need answers for. And when you're a small team, not prepared to support, these influxes of hiring, it can be incredibly overwhelming. So we had a company that in mind built out a solution. We're able to realize that this could be productized. Our goal was to bring a product to market that was really easy to implement so that companies could get down a first step to a path of leveraging AI without being afraid of it. Like to your point, people hear, what is AI? Well, one of the facets of AI is several of the facets of AI are what we launch into, which is we use an intelligent AI chatbot as the user interface. We have a solution that's designed to understand natural language processing, and we apply machine learning. And then after that, we have the whole AI data model and engine that's running to turn it. So getting a solution out there is what I needed to do before I could then tap other folks to kind of join in on the vision. Sure. So I brought John in. About a year later, I worked with some other very smart developers that I knew that were able to help us get something going. And then now with John on board, we can really architect solutions that are, enterprise grade, that actually do what you were describing, connect a lot of the disparate systems and siloed systems so that we can serve up data from a lot of different types of systems through the chatbot interface. So evolving the product is where we're going. And that's what John, being on board as CTO, is going to allow us to do.
So, John, when you look at what you folks have put together at Medibot, what's the biggest challenge your team has faced in, deploying AI in HR?
Yeah, the biggest challenge we've had deploying AI into HR is context of these terms. So most of these complicated language processing systems are built from very standard models, right? There's a lot of them out there. There's one called GP2. There's one called BERT. These are all things that Google and Microsoft and all these companies have put together. And they train them on large sets of public data, open source data.
Sure.
So people will take all of Wikipedia and make that part of their language model. They'll take all the Creative Commons books and they'll make a language model out of that. None of those models will tell you that PTO means paid time off.
Right.
There's a lot of concepts in business, not just in HR, but in business that are not adequately expressed by these language models. You can give them hints. You can give these traditional models context that these things mean these things, but that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of domain knowledge to make those connections, give the context to these language models internally. And the biggest challenge we have is teasing those out, because what we're learning is that each company will have their own variant, their own vernacular of these things. Everyone's got a different name for the employee rewards and recognitions program, let's say. That's a really good example of things that you just have to do on a per customer basis. Building a technology that allows you to pivot quickly to the specific vernacular for that company is actually, where the data plumber comes in from the data scientist.
Okay. Well, if you remember the Chevy Chase movie Fletch, there was a line in there that was, there's no such thing as dumb questions. There's just dumb people asking questions. So I'm going to be a dumb person asking a question. With the rise of the social constructs of gender pronouns, is that something that is marshaled into your technology?
I don't think we've had the issue. We're not identifying people at a gender level,
Okay.
so I don't think we've had that problem. That's a good call out. Something we need to be thinking about is, when we get to that level of customization of an answer, we have to be very, very careful. It'd be interesting to absorb that data. If the HR systems even kept track of that, it might be better just to avoid having that concept inside of your system at all. Mostly, and just going with very gender neutral pronouns would be, I think, a smarter way to do it. Like, do I need to identify this person as a man or woman for the sake of my business? Very likely no. Just, it's a person with needs, and there's an inherent danger in knowing too much about someone, perhaps.
Exactly. Well, the reason it even came to my mind was, as you were talking about how you were putting in architecting your solutions, is I've seen on lots of websites these days where people are asking if what you identify with. Okay. And so that's data that they're collecting. And the thing in their world that I've always said that it's like social media and public data is just a great way to profile yourself. I mean, it just is. So I was just curious if that was something that applied in that space, because goodness gracious, there's a huge list that people can, a huge list.
We have to be very careful with privacy, because when you're talking to a system that serves out information about benefits, the question you ask that system are they're landmines, right? If you're asking about specific medical procedures, you have to be super careful to safeguard all that data coming in. You've got to encrypt everything. You have to anonymize where possible, because if you're asking about, hey, do we, what's our heart coverage, you don't want that to be public knowledge. We take that obligation at Medibot very seriously. We go to extensive lengths to anonymize data that comes in, and we do encrypt everything in transit and at rest, because we do recognize that people's privacy and dignity, not just from a legal perspective, but the dignity of being an employee, are at stake.
Yeah. Now let me ask you another geek question, then I'm going to pivot to another question to Beth for a moment. Just being the geek and me knowing the foundation, a lot of systems, or most systems, are based on databases. What are you using on the back end to manage your data today? Are you using commercial databases? Are you using open source? What's the background on this? What's the background?
as a small company, as a small business, we rely heavily on managed databases. We're using the Azure platform, Microsoft Azure platform.
Yep.
We picked this actually over Amazon for very specific reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So our CMS database, which manages the day-to-day interactions of the answers we serve out, are all in a SQL Server managed database. We have other repositories of data for the machine learning and for the language models that we're using that are more file system based. That's traditionally how those things are done. But yeah, we do leverage a lot of data repositories, not just a database. But the database is super important because it's essentially a CMS.
Yeah.
1/3 of the system is a content management system where the HR person can go in and change the answers to a question. A good example of that is the PTO. What's our holiday policy, or what's our holiday schedule? You want to be able to give that HR person. You want to empower them to go make rapid changes to the answers this thing kicks out without reaching out to Medibot. If you suddenly add a flex day into your benefits package, you don't want to call Medibot and have us do a service ticket or a service engagement to change that answer. You need to make that change. You need to do it rapidly. You need to do it without our involvement. And that's sort of the core tenet of the Medibot product.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so Beth, we've talked some geek speak here. Help me out for a minute. Pretend I'm a medium-sized company. I might have, 200 employees, 200 to 300 employees, something like that. And you're approaching them. What's your 30-second elevator pitch to someone like that? I mean, what problem are you going to solve for me?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's one that most of the folks that I call know about. I'll say Medibot is kind of like the Alexa for the workplace. We use that analogy just for a little quick light bulb to go
Sure.
off. It's a quick way for them to say, hey, employees can ask Medibot questions. We'll provide them automated answers. However, you have the ability to control, as John mentioned, the answers to the questions employees receive through accessing our easy to use admin portal. Whole solution implements in days or weeks, and you can have the power of AI and the data of the usage of the solution on a dashboard with an affordable price. So that's kind of our way of getting people introduced to the idea and getting a conversation going to see where the solution can go, because we often describe our solution as the first step down a path to leveraging AI and automation, to taking on some of the routine or administrative tasks and getting them into a place that you can start to grow out the solution. Because it is, like we've discussed, AI is big, and where do you start? And that's, I think, what's crippling a lot of companies out there that want to go through data transformation, is that they don't understand how do you even get started. Right. And so we call our solutions an easy first quick win to being able to say, I am starting down this path. I'm going to do it,
True, because thinking through the HR systems I've been involved with, it's a contained environment. It's not like manufacturing or research or distribution and logistics and those type of things. It's a rather contained, maybe I should say that, it's a rather contained environment, and it would make sense that you could say, well, this is an easy win.
It is, because many of the professionals that work in both HR and IT, they're used to the types of technologies that they deploy or implement to support employees. And many of these solutions can be incredibly complex. Things like payroll and benefits solutions. Everybody's got to get paid. You'll be the first, person everyone comes running to if they don't get their paycheck. Right. And those can be very lengthy projects. So sometimes that word implementation makes them think of 2 years of time to transition a payroll system. And it's like, no, you can have powerful technology and implement it and start to actually realize the benefit in weeks to months, with packaged AI solutions like we provide to the market.
Okay. Now, I was always taught in my career, being a dark side of the industry, sales, that you had to follow the money. Okay. So when you follow the money, generally you are a cost avoidance technology or you're a cost reduction technology. Do you throw yourself in both boxes, one box? How do you present to people?
Yeah, no, that's a I mean, we definitely think about that. And when we describe our ROI or, time, we do it in two ways. One is the time savings of every single individual HR professional, IT person that is distracted or asked questions on a daily basis. Even if we save 1 hour of an HR person's time, which on average is how many is how many questions they get. It equates to 1 hour of responses to individual questions. If we say 1 hour of time of each person, we provide over 200% ROI. And the
Wow.
time savings and the cost of what that individual has toward the business, but yet more importantly, what was the opportunity cost of what they didn't get done
Right.
that could have been more meaningful and impactful to the business. And that's just on what we call the business user side story. Now for the employee themselves, many companies do a lot of research, and there's information out there about productivity. Everybody's talking about productivity today.
Yeah.
And if you ask employees, what are some of those barriers to being productive within an ecosystem of a company, a lot of it is, I can't find the information I need to do my job. So if we can help an employee even cut down by getting a quick answer to a question that helps them facilitate doing their job faster, more accurately, with consistent information, then we drive a productivity story for businesses as well.
Fantastic. So, John, let me throw this out to you, and Beth, you can jump in too. Again, stupid person asking questions, not the stupid questions. Is it fair to say, and again, I'm asking this to help our listeners here today, is it fair to say that AI is really a sweet spot for it is to get rid of mundane tasks, so your people are freed up to do other things?
I think that's one leg of that stool.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly it is, and it begins to touch on another thing that AI is contributing to, which is robotic process automation, RPA. So it is, but it can also be used to find things you didn't know about your business. So yeah, part of it is mundane tasks need to go away. I think that's always been one of the goals of technology and how it gets its initial
Right.
usage inside of an organization. Sure.
Well, I think it puts it on steroids a little bit because, like you say, it's when Beth was just describing some of the issues there. What did I not get done today because I'm doing this mundane stuff that literally could be sourced through the system.
Oh, for sure. And if you ever manage developers, the last thing they ever want to do is get out of their desk and go find HR. If they have a
Yes.
question about something, the first thing you'll do is ask their lead, right? So that 15-minute question just became two people's 15-minute question, and the lead might not know. So then they go to their manager. Well, and they get, then he too told friends, and he told friends, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes, there is an issue where if we can get information to your most valuable employees, your high value employees, your senior developers very quickly, that's just going to help your turnover, and that's going to be great. And yeah, that's a huge thing we look at.
Now, Beth, for the executives in the company, is the data brought back or the intelligence that's brought back, is that brought up back in sort of like a KPI dashboard, or how does someone look at this information that the AI system is putting together?
Yeah, one of the big pieces of the solution that we love to talk about and share with customers, and then they've fully embraced it, is a dashboard. So within our portal solution that our internal business users access to edit the answers to questions, and is front and center is a dashboard. And as employees utilize Medibot and ask questions, not only is it showing exactly how many questions are being answered in real time, but we've dissected the data on this dashboard to show graphs and images of from what country do they live in, and of the people in that country, what kinds of questions are those individuals asking. And so what we've actually been able to do for our customers is surface issues that might be happening and they weren't even aware of. For example, one of our customers was transitioning to a new payroll system, and for some reason the link went down, or the system went down, and everyone was asking questions like they were trying to get access to a paycheck stub, could not get it. Well, it was because, there was a major error at this other vendor. But surfacing that data was something they never would have had visibility into before. and it allows them to understand how to be responsive. And to the point where we were talking about, the pandemic has changed people to be, remote and working in all different types of hours. There's a need to understand what people are, what's bothering people. What are they looking for information about? I mean, we had a question about telemedicine, and of course that was skyrocketing during COVID, because that's how people were getting, going to the doctor. And a lot of companies had that benefit as part of their insurance carrier's solution, but nobody ever accessed it before COVID, right? So now they're able to see, oh, wow, okay, everybody is utilizing, they are taking care of themselves. And, unfortunately, there's questions about, the employee assistance program, the EAP, where people can call when they're stressed or have, they want some therapy help. I mean, those questions were asked more. And so it's good to give businesses visibility into their people, especially when they weren't able to see them every day.
Right.
And if they were used to that, passing someone in the hallway type interaction.
Yeah. I pass the refrigerator a lot.
Yeah.
So, at least I hope I do. So, John, I know that a lot of this data probably is in disparate systems from different vendors. Is that a big portion of what you're having to do, is architecting access to different vendors? Because, the whole world of software is delivered SaaS. I mean, that's software as a service for those people who are not software geeks like us. But I can remember back in the days when you were putting AS400s on site, or, we were putting, connecting to mainframes and all these kinds of stuff. And now you've got a SaaS world. So how's that work?
Yeah, back in those days, we were just being punished.
Yeah.
But now, actually, in the SaaS world, it's actually easier.
Yes.
The rise of cloud integration platforms, iPaaS, to use an older term, has made the integration story a little bit more palatable. When we were doing a lot of integrations on-premise systems, you talk about a little while ago, we mentioned the siloed data systems, the tyranny of the corporate firewall.
Yeah.
Those problems are largely abated with cloud-based SaaS systems, because they're all API driven, right? So you look at a modern architecture SaaS product, it's a web UI that hits a set of APIs that are all cloud accessible. So in many ways, it's gotten easier to go and retrieve systems like that. And that there are really two kinds of integrations we have to account for at Medibot. One is a system of record for a data that you don't machine learn, you never want to know about.
Yeah.
If you asked about what's my PTO balance, and we want to do an integration to some system to get that, you have 46 hours. We don't want to do machine learning. We don't want to bring in 4,000 records of PTO balance. That's crazy. No one wants to give us that data, and quite frankly, I don't want to ingest it. So in that case, we do a real-time integration out to that system, through web services, and that's a really good example where this kind of integration is much easier to do today than it would have been 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to ask this question to both of you, because it's going to be a little different, I think, for each one. We'll start with you, Beth. What's next on the horizon?
For Medibot, next on the horizon is we embrace this world of change that happened last year, and we keep very close to a lot of the customers and organizations out there that are making those hard decisions. Do we stay remote? Do we continue? Do we add in hybrid work, or do we go back into the office?
Sure.
So what's next with Medibot is, how do we build solutions that not only help, what we do today, automate answers to employee questions, but engage with employees more, to that whole level of discussion that we started to go down. How do we sense and understand what's happening with the people within our business? Because what the story Medibot wants to bring more to market is, how can we help you with your employee retention? How can we help you treat your employee like those retailers treated their customers? How do we serve up information to your employee if they're interested in getting a promotion? What are some of the things that they're going to need to do? Can we know that employee is interested in becoming a manager and actually push manager trainings to them from an LMS solution so that they can be encouraged to take those? Can we drive more, information about, other positions and opportunities that are opening across the business, and send them a job description for an internal transfer? So that's really where Medibot is headed, is knowing more about the individual and being able to serve up more information to them that can help them be essentially managed in a way to support their career growth and development within business, which is incredibly hard to do for a limited number of people that are in HR to be able to understand all their people and what they're going to want out of a company. But I'll put a little asterisk on that. The average tenure at most companies is between 2.5 and 2.7 years. And so companies are struggling to say, how do we keep our talent longer? And when you talk to a given individual, especially the generational differences, if they don't have room for advancement and they're not seeing new career opportunities for growth, they're going to go somewhere else. Yeah. So what can you do as an employer to help, give them that TLC that may need some, help with technology, that there's just not enough human interaction that can really support all those different types of people that are looking for ways to grow within organizations. So you can keep even just one more year on an employee life cycle within a company is tremendous cost savings to a business. And, the value that the organization gets on having that continuous, knowledge stay inside the business is huge. It's huge.
Well, looking back over my tech career, I think one of the biggest things that sometimes tech people don't focus on, the ones who are successful do, but technology is all about change management. I mean, it is, okay? And if you look at what's happened over the pandemic, there are a lot of positive things that are interesting about it. Hey, I don't have to get in my car and drive down to the office and commute and all those things, and there's no wasted time at the cooler, kind of stuff. But then there's some of the negatives. I don't have some of the camaraderie. I don't have some of the team building. I don't have the fact that I can actually see what my employees are doing today, or the fact that Johnny didn't come into the office till noon type of stuff. So there's pluses and minuses on both sides. And I think it's going to be interesting. And I think you tapped on a few of those things, is how are companies going to manage that change? Because I don't know if everybody will go back hybrid. I think that's probably going to be the most popular model. But there's a lot of industries you've got to be in person. And then there's people like in software. Why would I ever go back into an office, right? So I think that's you're really you're hitting on a few things. So John, what's on the horizon for you as the technologist CTO?
Yeah, we are going all in on the conversational AI concepts. And this is another term that we need to define a little bit. A conversational AI is a bot that you talk with either through text or voice, okay, that understands the context of your previous utterances to give you a more refined answer. Okay. So, you can see this in chatbots today in a very simple way, where if you log into, some reservation website and you say, I want to make a reservation for 7:30, they'll say, how many people? What kind of cuisine do you want? The conversation back and forth of that bot makes that bot seem more alive or more relevant, and that'll drive better engagement and keep your retention higher on that product being used. Those are very simple examples. What we want to be able to do is take that to the next level, and I think that will happen with AI technology as it improves. Is the context of a conversation will give you more accurate and more relevant responses as you go. And that's both an understanding of business need as well as a generational leap in the AI technologies that we currently have.
Fascinating. It's a great time to be alive. There's so many cool things happening. It is fabulous. And I thank you both for coming on today. It's been a lot of fun to sit here and kind of have some geek speak tough, and then talk some business sides of things, and talk about, the impacts of technology and that kind of stuff. So now I always ask this question. This will be the first time you get it. And if I have you back, because it's highly likely that I'm going to have you both back, and maybe individually. Okay. So it's the last question for today. We have in our Western cultures, because it's all across the world, the concept of a bucket list. Okay. Now, I actually have interviewed the bucket list guy. He is down in Australia. Okay. It's Trav Bell. If you get a chance, episode number 60, go listen to it. The guy's a hoot, man. He is hilarious. One of the best interviews I've ever done. But, with that bucket list, there's always an opposite list. Okay. The things we have no interest in doing. Okay. Now, that list rhymes with bucket and starts with an F, but I won't say that because we have a family show. So there's an F-it list that's out there. So I'm going to ask both of you and see whoever goes second has better chance of some things that might, one or two things that might be on your F it list. Now, because you guys have been very transparent, talked about a lot of technology and business and those types of things. Now, I'll give you a couple examples to sort of wet the whistle. Those who listen to the show know that I will never, ever again do a Lakota Sioux sweat lodge. The concept of excessive heat, excessive humidity, excessive drumming and chanting. No, not going to do that again. And then it's like something as silly as sardines. Not doing those. Okay. So I'm going to pick on John. He gets to go first. All right, John, what might be a thing or two that's on your F it list?
My F it list, sure, and it's pretty relevant to the last years. I have no desire to work from home exclusively, right? I don't want to be in the cave and sit here and be isolated. I need to be around other people. So the idea that we would always work from home and that's the sole measure of interaction, I want no part of that. I want to be at a company that allows me to interact with people face to face and be around other human beings. It's kind of the opposite of my bucket list, I guess, in that regard.
The world is starved for a lot of interaction. All right.
It is, I feel that way, certainly.
Beth, you're up. What might be on your F it list?
Well, I was not thinking just as recently. I was thinking further back. I worked on a fishing boat in Alaska when I was in my early 20s to pay off student loan debt. And that is something I will never do again, to be in the Bering Sea of Alaska on a boat with, frankly, a lot of smelly fish, not a lot of fun, so.
And also that's high risk. That's life and death. I dated a girl in college that was from Anchorage and her brothers did it. And that's scary stuff.
Yeah. I was on one of the larger factory processor boats, but I didn't realize it. There's something about being in your 20s where you're incredibly naive and don't understand a lot of the things you put yourself into.
I have a high school classmate that went up to do that one summer and didn't come back. So
that's a shame.
Sorry.
So anyway, well, thanks guys. It's been awesome today. Great to get to know you. Thank you for being so helpful to help us understand AI, a very practical application of it. Understanding the technology, understanding the business side of it. And thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for having us. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Okay, folks, we'll call it a wrap for this episode today. Please do not forget to go by the show website, rexandrewshow.com, because there's more information about our guests here today. And of course, information about all of our guests. And then I think we have about 50 guests that are lined up. So take a look at those who might want to tune in when they get live. So until next time, I always want to say these three things: be safe, but be bold and make it a great day.